All right. I have been waiting for this for 4 years. For someone to stand in front of a room full of European leaders, look them in the eye, and tell them what they're doing is wrong, and that America won't be walked on anymore. We're not your piggy bank. We're not your checkbook. We're not doing your bidding for you. We will operate in our interest and will not ignore others. I have been waiting throughout the last 4 years of the most disastrous administration in foreign policy for the speech that J.D. Vance gave today in Munich that said, globalism is dead.
In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town. And under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
He gave a 20-minute speech where he pointed out all the things that Europe has tried to avoid hearing from their electorate for the last 10 years. He said things that Europe has been basically jailing people for speaking out about. Illegal and mass migration, asylum seekers and refugees, ruining their safety, their country, and their culture. J.D. Vance looked them right in the eye and handed them that harsh reality, the reality that through fear of jail, the same people in the room have forced their citizens not to say the obvious.
We know the situation, it didn't materialize in a vacuum. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city. It's a terrible story, but it's one we've heard way too many times in Europe and unfortunately too many times in the United States as well. An asylum seeker, often a young man in his mid-20s, already known to police, rams a car into a crowd and shatters a community. How many times must we suffer these appalling setbacks before we change course and take our shared civilization in a new direction?
Thank you. The best part, though, was their faces. Almost no applause, by the way. The scorns and the pompous look. How dare this man give us the brutal, honest truth? That was the highlight of my year. He went on to ask, how did it happen? How did the people who, alongside us, by the way, who won the Cold War, go on to become the very thing, the very big tyrannical government anti-freedom machine that Europe fought to defeat?
They lost because they neither valued nor respected all of the extraordinary blessings of liberty. The freedom to surprise, to make mistakes, to invent, to build. As it turns out, you can't mandate innovation or creativity, just as you can't force people what to think, what to feel, or what to believe. And we believe those things are certainly connected. And unfortunately, when I look at Europe today, it's sometimes not so clear what happened to some of the Cold War's winners.
And there were no applause from that. From that room. I was howling. I think many people in Europe who were watching it were probably happy as all get out, too, because J.D. Vance said what they couldn't. The people of Europe, for the most part, are so tired of this. I watched as the camera panned out, and you saw their faces, too. The smirks of these people with their disdain. It was even disbelief. But some of them started to realize that they were, in fact, doing what they were being called out for. And J.D. Vance came with the receipts.
I look to Brussels, where EU commissars warn citizens that they intend to shut down social media during times of civil unrest the moment they spot what they've judged to be, quote, hateful content. Or to this very country, where police have carried out raids against citizens suspected of posting anti-feminist comments online as part of, quote, combating misogyny on the internet, a day of action.
Europe. Look, this is what Vance was trying to call out. Europe is a real-life example of what happened in the movie Demolition Man.
Look, you can't take away people's right to be.
Yeah. Vance didn't stop there, though. He called them out for their tyrannical attacks on religion.
2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes.
This is everything I've been waiting or wanting someone to say in front of Europe. I never cared enough to say it because we got our own problems over here in America, and that's usually what I focus on. But he looked Scottish officials in the face, dead in the eye, in that crowd, and called them out for prosecuting people who dared pray in their own home.
This last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
This is the second in command of the greatest country in the world. This is why when I tell you that America is freedom's last chance, it is. Look, we dodged a bullet in November by electing Trump. Because you can see from this speech, if this administration did not win, there is no free state to flee to. This is the message the world needs to get through their heads, that the ones suppressing thought, the ones suppressing innovation and freedom, they have never been the good guys. And somewhere between winning World War II, the Cold War, and now, Europe forgot that in an attempt to be this leashed utopia of elitist ideologues. And J.D. Vance just shattered their glass house. He said something, though, that I don't think has ever been said in this way before. And this applies to everyone in Europe. It applies to Ukraine. It applies to even Hillary Clinton and here in America, and even back to 2016. Roll it.
But I'd ask my European friends to have some perspective. You can believe it's wrong for Russia to buy social media advertisements to influence your elections. We certainly do. You can condemn it on the world stage even. But if your democracy can be destroyed with a few $100,000 of digital advertising from a foreign country, then it wasn't very strong to begin with.
There are two people clapping in that entire audience because I think they're starting to realize. I think those two people who clapped that are starting to realize that the House of Cards narrative, that Russia is some big, powerful boogeyman, is falling apart. And J.D. Vance, he didn't close with this, but he probably should have. I pulled it out of the middle of his speech. That all these people in that room, and even some here in this country, have been telling us who the bad guy is. But they've forgotten what sets us apart from the bad guy. Because a lot of these countries in that room have become awfully similar to the guy they demonize.
I've heard a lot about what you need to defend yourselves from, and of course that's important. But what has seemed a little bit less clear to me, and certainly I think to many of the citizens of Europe, is what exactly it is that you're defending yourselves for. What is the positive vision that animates this shared security compact that we all believe is so important? And I believe deeply that there is no security if you are afraid of the voices, the opinions, and the conscience that guide your very own people.
Yes. Yes. It's like the scene out of Armageddon, before they go up on the asteroid, where all the bureaucrats and the scientists, they want to lock down this renegade crew before going up to save the world, not let them out. And their leader, Bruce Willis at the time, he wanted them to go out for a night on the town. And his reasoning was, you have to let them go out and enjoy the things that are out there because I don't want them to get up on that asteroid and forget what they're fighting for. We as a society have been so consumed with personal grievances as like a currency, looking to blame anybody but ourselves. And this is mainly aimed at Europe. But America's not innocent in that we have achieved all these astronomically great things because we as Americans, and not recently, but in the past, Europeans, and to quote Ronald Reagan, it was because here in this land, we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Never been truer. This is what 77 million people in America voted for. This is the mentality that built the atom bomb, that out-innovated the world and entrusted the people, us the people, to decide what's best for us, ourselves, and our families. This speech is everything that I went to war for. And I would do it 100 times over for my kids to see this kind of no BS leadership on the world stage. I want my kids to have this for the rest of their lives. It is so good to be back.
He loves the Constitution. He fights for what's right. He hates the bad guys. He's a freedom warrior. He's your freedom warrior. Watch Carl Higbie every weekday on Newsmax.